During a sun-drenched afternoon, the aroma of sizzling burgers filled the backyard as our family gathered for a casual barbecue. I watched as my brother Miles doted on his fiancée, Cora, serving her a plate of food with a besotted grin. Although beautiful and charming on the surface, something about Cora's calculating gaze unsettled me. "So, Lena," Cora said, her perfectly manicured fingers toying with the stem of her wine glass, "Miles mentioned you're a tutor at the community college." I tensed, sensing the subtle condescension in her tone. "Yes, I find it incredibly rewarding to help students unlock their full potential." Cora's scarlet lips curved into a patronizing smile. "How quaint. I can't imagine settling for such a modest career, but I suppose not everyone has ambition." My jaw clenched as Miles shot me an apologetic glance, oblivious to the true extent of Cora's disdain. I forced a polite smile, determined not to cause a scene at our family gathering. Later, as I helped Mom clear the dishes, she leaned in close. "Cora seems a bit intense, doesn't she?" I exhaled slowly, choosing my words carefully. "I'm just worried Miles might be rushing into this. They've only been together for a few months." Mom's brow furrowed with concern. "You don't think she's after our family's money, do you?" Before I could respond, Miles strode into the kitchen, his arm draped possessively around Cora's waist. "There are my two favorite ladies. What are you whispering about?" Cora flashed her dazzling smile, but I noticed the calculation behind her eyes. "Oh, just girl talk." As the evening wound down, I couldn't shake the uneasy feeling that Cora's true motives extended far beyond love and commitment. Her snide remarks hinted at a deep disdain for anyone or anything she deemed beneath her. And for some reason, I feared my brother had become her latest target. In the weeks following the barbecue, my unease around Cora only intensified. I noticed peculiar charges appearing on the family business accounts. Expensive jewelry, designer clothes, even a deposit for a lavish destination wedding venue. When I questioned Miles about it, he brushed it off, insisting Cora was just getting settled into her new role managing our finances. "She's brilliant with numbers, Lena," he said dreamily. "I've never felt more confident leaving that side of things to someone else." I wanted to believe him, but something didn't add up. How could this near stranger have earned such blind trust so quickly? One evening, I stopped by Miles' apartment unannounced, hoping to catch Cora off guard. She opened the door, her perfectly coiffed hair and immaculate makeup striking for that late hour. "Lena, what a surprise," she purred, not bothering to hide her disdain. "Miles isn't home from the office yet. Actually, I wanted to talk to you." I pushed past her into the living room, unfazed by her narrowed eyes. "I've noticed some irregular expenses on the business accounts you're managing." Cora's expression remained infuriatingly calm. "Oh? Like what?" I listed off the suspicious charges: designer clothes, lavish vacations, even personal care services that seemed wildly excessive. "Care to explain what our family's hard-earned money is being spent on?" For a moment her mask slipped, revealing a flash of anger. But just as quickly, the placid smile returned. "Lena, darling, you worry too much. Can't a woman treat herself occasionally?" She trailed a finger along my arm, her voice taking on a sickly sweet tone. "Why don't you find yourself a nice man and leave the business matters to me?" I jerked away from her touch, repulsed. "I don't trust you, Cora, and I won't stop until I expose whatever game you're playing." Her smile turned frigid. "You'd be wise to mind your own business. Wouldn't want anything unfortunate to happen to your beloved community college, now would you?" The thinly veiled threat hung in the air as I stormed out, more convinced than ever that Cora's intentions were sinister. If Miles refused to see the truth, I'd have to take matters into my own hands, for the sake of our family. After my confrontation with Cora, I knew I needed to dig deeper into her background. Miles was too blinded by love to see the truth, so it was up to me to expose her for who she really was before it was too late. I spent sleepless nights scouring the internet, searching for any clues about Cora's past relationships or financial dealings. What I uncovered was a trail of wealthy men she had dated briefly before unexpectedly cutting ties and moving on to her next target. Posing as a prospective client, I even contacted a few of Cora's former romantic interests. The stories they told painted a disturbing picture, one of manipulation, deceit, and a ruthless pursuit of money and status. She love-bombed me at first, one man confided over the phone, his voice laced with bitterness. Showered me with attention, made me feel like the luckiest guy in the world, but as soon as I signed over power of attorney, she drained my accounts and disappeared. Another disclosed how Cora had pressured him into an accelerated wedding timeline, only to call it off at the last minute and walk away with the non-refundable deposits. With each new revelation, my determination to stop Cora grew stronger. She was clearly a master of deception, and Miles was headed down the same tragic path as her previous victims if I didn't intervene. Meanwhile, Cora's schemes showed no signs of slowing down. She insisted on hosting an over-the-top engagement party, under the guise of celebrating their love, but likely as another opportunity to flaunt her illicit wealth. We simply must have it at the Grand Pavilion Ballroom. She gushed to Miles one evening when I stopped by unannounced. "It's the most exclusive venue in town." Miles beamed, utterly captivated. "Of course, my love, whatever you desire." She caught my skeptical gaze and smirked. "Lena, you're welcome to come as well, if you can find something suitable to wear from the community college's bargain bin." I bit back the urge to slap that smug grin off her face, reminding myself that confrontation would only cause Miles to further retreat into her web of lies. As I left, Cora's parting words cut like a knife. "I'd watch your back if I were you. You never know when something might slip through the cracks." Her vague threats only strengthened my resolve. If Cora thought she could bully me into submission, she was sorely mistaken. This was war, and I wouldn't rest until I reclaimed my brother from her toxic clutches. As the days ticked down to the engagement party, Cora's manipulation tactics intensified. She paid a visit to my parents, batting her long lashes as she spun an elaborate tale about investing in a once-in-a-lifetime business opportunity that required a hefty cash infusion. "It would secure all of our futures," she said, her voice dripping with false sincerity, "but we'll need your financial support to make it happen." My heart sank as I watched my normally sharp-witted parents get ensnared in Cora's deceitful web. Dad nodded enthusiastically, smitten by her charm offensive, while Mom wrung her hands with concern. "I'm not sure we have that kind of money readily available," she fretted. Cora's smile remained plastered on, but her eyes flashed with impatience. "Surely you could liquidate some assets or take out a loan against the family business? Miles and I would pay you back tenfold once this deal goes through." Before they could respond, I burst into the living room, unable to stay silent any longer. "Don't do it. She's lying to you, to all of us." Cora whirled toward me, her expression contorting into a venomous glare. "How dare you barge in here and make such accusations?" "Because it's the truth." I shot back, my voice rising with pent-up frustration. "I know all about your history of scamming wealthy men, Cora. You're nothing but a con artist." For the first time, real panic flickered across her features as she struggled to regain her composure. "She's delusional," Cora sputtered, turning to my stunned parents. "Lena's just bitter and jealous that her own life lacks purpose or direction." My fists clenched at my sides as Mom gaped at us, utterly bewildered. Dad's expression hardened as he considered Cora's deceptively innocent demeanor. "Is this true, Lena?" he asked gruffly. "Because if you're making outlandish claims with no proof, that's a line I won't tolerate." I took a deep, steadying breath. "I have proof. Lots of it." Reaching into my bag, I pulled out the dossier I'd compiled. Bank statements, testimonies from Cora's former flames, even a nugget about a prior arrest for financial fraud that had been expunged. Cora paled as I slammed the stack of papers on the coffee table with a thud. Her green eyes, so adept at feigning warmth, now blazed with undisguised hatred. "You'll regret this," she hissed through gritted teeth. I leveled her with an icy glare. "No, Cora. You're the one who's going to regret ever messing with my family." With that vow lingering in the tense silence, I turned on my heel and stormed out, my mind already formulating a plan to put a stop to Cora's twisted games once and for all. In the aftermath of my confrontation with Cora, I wasted no time coordinating my next move. I knew her vindictive nature meant she would likely retaliate, so I had to strike first and decisively. I gathered a small group of trusted relatives, my Uncle Jack, Cousin Emma, and Miles's childhood best friend, Alex. After swearing them to secrecy, I laid out the incriminating evidence I'd compiled on Cora. "This woman is out to bleed our family dry," I declared, sliding copies of the dossier across the table. We need to expose her lies at the engagement party before she has a chance to make her next play. Uncle Jack stroked his graying beard, eyes narrowed in contemplation. I always had a bad feeling about that one. Count me in. Emma and Alex exchanged a loaded glance before nodding in solemn agreement. With my covert team assembled, we began mapping out an airtight plan of attack. Meanwhile, Cora continued flaunting her false persona, leveraging Miles's family connections to further her own agenda. I cringed as she sidled up to unsuspecting relatives at a lunch gathering, batting her lashes and spinning grandiose tales about her supposed business ventures. We're diversifying into high-end real estate development, she gushed, clinging to Miles' arm with an adoring smile. It's such an exciting opportunity. Miles beamed, utterly enthralled, as the others offered congratulations and well wishes. Only my dad regarded Cora with a measure of skepticism after my damning revelations. As the party drew nearer, tensions mounted. Cora caught me leaving the house one afternoon, her eyes glittering with unveiled malice. I know what you're up to, she hissed, strutting toward me with fists clenched. You and your pathetic little crew can try to take me down, but I'll bury you all. I refused to flinch, squaring my shoulders as I met her venomous glare. I'm not afraid of you, Cora. It's over. A cruel smile curved her painted lips. We'll see about that. The night before the party, my phone pinged with an ominous text from an unknown number. Give it up, or you'll lose everything. Attached was a photo of the community college where I taught, the implication clear. I shuddered, but my resolve didn't waver. Cora had upped the stakes, but she had no idea what I was capable of to protect my family. Tomorrow would be her ultimate reckoning. The Grand Pavilion ballroom glistened with opulence, the crystal chandeliers casting a warm glow over the lavish floral arrangements and white linen tables. But beneath the glamorous facade, an undercurrent of tension rippled through the air. Cora swept into the venue on Miles's arm, resplendent in a slinky emerald gown that left little to the imagination. Her smug smile faltered infinitesimally when she spotted our covert team stationed at strategic points around the room. Tonight will be a night to remember, she purred into Miles's ear, tightening her grip on his bicep. Just wait until you hear the announcement I have planned. As guests mingled and fawned over the extravagant affair, I caught Emma's eye and gave an imperceptible nod. It was time to spring our trap. The first subtle strike came as Uncle Jack engaged Cora in conversation, steering her toward a quiet corner with a few polite compliments. Your dress is exquisite, he remarked, his grandfatherly demeanor utterly disarming. It must have cost a small fortune, just like this entire party, I'd wager. Cora preened under the faux praise. Why, thank you, Jack. Miles and I spare no expense when it comes to the finer things. Of course. Although I must admit, I was surprised when Lena told me about your unconventional business dealings. He hissed softly, watching her face contort with the first flicker of unease. Fraud, extortion, swindling wealthy bachelors out of their fortunes. It's all a bit unsavory, wouldn't you agree? Cora's mouth dropped open, but before she could respond, Emma sidled up with a conspiratorial grin. Oh, Aunt Cora, you simply must meet my friend Claire, she chirped, gesturing toward the sour-faced woman at her side. She's dying to share her experience dating you a few years back. As Claire launched into a diatribe about the thousands Cora had conned out of her, I watched the blood drain from cunning schemer's face. Nearby, Alex began questioning Miles about the astronomical party costs, while casually mentioning his concerns over Cora's misuse of funds. Within minutes, a hush fell over the ballroom as Cora's panicked gaze flickered between the damning witnesses closing in from every angle. Miles, honey, you have to believe me, she began, her voice wavering. But it was my turn to strike the final blow. I stepped forward, folders of irrefutable proof clutched in my hands. Everyone, I'm afraid there's been a terrible mistake, I announced, loud enough for everyone to hear. This party is a sham. A ruse intended to distract us all from the truth about Cora's despicable intentions. Gasps rippled through the crowd as Cora paled, frozen in the spotlight of scrutiny. I have evidence, I declared, fanning out the incriminating documents with a flourish. Bank statements, legal records, testimonials, all laying out Cora's long history of defrauding and manipulating people for her own nefarious gain. Our relatives rallied behind me, bolstering my words with a chorus of condemnation aimed at the now exposed charlatan. Cora's mouth opened and closed like a gasping fish, her facade of confidence utterly shattered. In that moment, it was evident that her reign of terror had finally, deservedly, come to an ignominious end. As the weight of the evidence crushed down on her, Cora's composure rapidly unraveled. Her perfectly coiffed demeanor disintegrated into a frantic, wide-eyed panic. "Miles, darling, you can't possibly believe these ridiculous lies," she cried, grasping his arm with claw-like desperation. "It's all a big misunderstanding." But the hurt and betrayal etched on Miles's face spoke volumes. Slowly, reluctantly, the veil of infatuation lifted, as he absorbed the damning testimonies and paper trail detailing Cora's web of deceit. "How could you?" he rasped, anguish lacing his words as he wrenched free of her grip. "You used me, my family, for your own selfish gain?" Cora opened her mouth, but no coherent defense emerged, only a strangled whimper as the stark reality crashed down upon her. She was finished, exposed for the callous con artist she truly was. As the stunned silence stretched on, Dad stepped forward, his expression grave. "I think it's time you left, Miss Jennings, and I'd advise against any further contact with my family." The use of her full name seemed to jolt Cora from her stupor. With a last desperate pivot, she swept a hand through her perfectly coiffed tresses and attempted a tremulous pout. "Please, I never meant for things to go this far," she simpered, sickly sweet. "I fell so deeply in love with Miles that I lost my way for a bit, but I'm willing to make amends, do anything to prove my devotion." Miles recoiled as if struck, his jaw tightening with righteous indignation. "Save it. I don't want to hear another word from you." His cold dismissal seemed to finally pierce Cora's delusional armor. Her attempts at manipulation collapsed entirely as bitter fury contorted her delicate features into an ugly sneer. "You'll regret this," she spat in my direction, green eyes blazing with visceral hatred. "All of you." But her vitriolic threats rang hollow against the wall of familial solidarity that had rallied against her depravity. We stood united, an impenetrable front that her malice could never breach. With a last contemptuous glare, Cora gathered the tattered shreds of her dignity and stormed out, the click of her designer heels fading into blessed silence. Gradually, the tension in the room dissipated as the truth of Cora's treachery sank in. Miles remained still as a statue, absorbing the emotional fallout, until Mom enveloped him in a comforting embrace. "It's going to be all right, sweetie," she murmured, stroking his hair with maternal tenderness. "We're here for you." Tears glistened in his eyes as he clung to her, finally allowing the anguish to flood forth. But even in his heartbreak, a glimmer of hope shone through. The knowledge that he had us, his stalwart family, to help guide him through the wreckage. As I watched my brother's agonizing journey towards healing begin, I felt a profound sense of relief. The nightmare was over, and justice had prevailed through the strength of our unbreakable bonds. 6 months later, the dark cloud of Cora's duplicity had fully lifted from our family. The business was thriving once again under Miles and my joint leadership, and the strained bonds that her twisted schemes had frayed were healing steadily. I smiled as I watched Miles pore over financial reports at his desk, a crease of concentration furrowing his brow. Gone was the love-struck naivete that had blinded him to Cora's true nature. In its place was a wiser, more grounded man who had learned the value of vigilance the hard way. "Lena, can you come take a look at these projections for next quarter?" he called out, glancing up with a warm smile. "I want to make sure I'm not missing anything." As I rounded the desk to stand at his side, I couldn't help but feel a swell of pride at how far he'd come. In the aftermath of Cora's exposure, Miles had thrown himself wholeheartedly into restoring the family business, determined to atone for the mistakes and vulnerabilities that had nearly spelled our ruin. "Everything looks solid to me," I assured him, scanning the spreadsheet with a practiced eye. "Though I think we could afford to be a bit more aggressive with the marketing budget for that new product line." Miles nodded thoughtfully, jotting down a note. "You're probably right. I trust your instincts." The easy camaraderie and mutual respect between us was a far cry from the strained tensions of months past. Cora's deception had shaken Miles to his core, but rather than retreat inward, he had emerged more committed than ever to upholding the values of honesty and integrity that were the bedrock of our family legacy. Over dinner that evening, conversation flowed as freely as the wine, our raucous laughter filling the air in a way it hadn't for far too long. "Remember when Cora tried to pass off that ratty old fur as a vintage Revlon?" Emma cackled, nearly spilling her drink as she dissolved into a fresh gale of mirth. An impish grin tugged at Miles' lips as he shook his head ruefully. "God, I can't believe how thoroughly she had me fooled. I'm just grateful you all saw through her act before it was too late." Mom reached across the table to give his hand a tender squeeze. "What matters is that you opened your eyes in the end, honey. We're just glad to have you back." As the night wound down and our boisterous clan gradually dispersed, I found myself alone on the back patio, gazing up at the twinkling canopy of stars. So much had changed, and yet in many ways we had emerged stronger, a family united by the indestructible bonds of loyalty and truth. In that tranquil moment, I felt a profound sense of gratitude and resolution wash over me. We had weathered Cora's storm of malice and emerged battle-tested but whole. And though the scars might never fully fade, our perseverance and love for one another would forever be the blazing beacon to guide us through any darkness that dared encroach on our lives again.
You are just a housewife. You don't even work. You're home all the time. So what's so hard about that?
My husband is constantly verbally abusive to me. I want to end my relationship with my outwardly good-looking husband. One day, I went to an elementary school presentation with him, and it was my daughter's turn. I spent a day secretly investing my father on his working days to find out how he spends his time. My dear husband, my daughter knows everything about you, even if you don't tell her. I'm Thelma, a stay-at-home mom. I worked as a flight attendant for a major airline until our daughter Jackie was born. My husband Zach was an upperclassman when we were still in high school. I even wished I could connect with him by praying in a church. When we got on a committee together, it felt like I was on the top of the world. Once we were able to talk a little, I was thrilled every day. But the day came when the school term changed and the committee came to an end. After that, there were no more opportunities for conversation. Nothing happened after that, and even Zach graduated. I never forgot him. Time passed, and I was working hard as a flight attendant for a major airline when God performed a miracle for me. He happened to be on a flight I was assigned to. It was a good thing that I went to pray in the church after I had made contact with him. Of course, I couldn't do anything fancy because I was working, but I was able to reconnect with Zach. After that, he and I got together. When we went to his parents' house, they were very happy to see us.
We are so happy to have a daughter because we only have boys. I won't forgive you if you make Thelma cry, okay? Take care of her for the rest of her life. That's what a man does.
I couldn't help but smile at how manly and kind he was. Things have been going well ever since. We bought a new house in a condo and were blessed with a beautiful daughter. The relationship with my in-laws had been completely smooth. And so the three of us lived happily ever after. The end. It would have been great if that was the end of the story. But reality was not like that. When my daughter was in the 4th grade, I started having trouble sleeping at night, and I had a mental breakdown. My husband has a job that requires him to travel frequently. My parents' home and his parents' home are far away. I had no one nearby to turn to in times of trouble. After 10 years of trying hard, I have finally reached my limit. I used to be a perfectionist by nature. It was my fault. As a result of being too hard on myself, my mind and body broke down. My husband's attitude toward me became cold when I couldn't do my housework properly and kept crying.
As a housewife, you just stay at home all the time without doing any work. What the hell is wrong with you?
My mother came to my house to help me recover from my illness. But my marriage completely broke down after that. My husband disrespected me. His attitude got worse. He complained about my housework. He complained about the stains on the laundry, the dust in the corner of the room, and the fact that I couldn't even cook a good meal. I was getting more and more trapped. But once we stepped out of the house, my husband's attitude changed completely, and he became the nice husband who puts his family first, even in front of our daughter. It made me sad to see him no longer be the person that I had once admired. I was disgusted with myself for laughing along with my husband, but I was completely under his control and could not resist. Days like this continued. One day, I noticed something about my husband. While my husband was in the bathroom, I happened to see a pop-up notification on his phone. There was a message with the name of a woman I didn't know, and there was a heart emoji in it. I was shocked, but I was also prepared for the day when this would happen in our current relationship. Still, there was nothing I could do. I didn't want to cause any trouble at home, and I felt sorry for my child if we divorced. These feelings are not lies. But even so, I didn't even have the courage to face my husband. I had been collecting evidence of the affair, just in case. But none of it seemed convincing enough, so I was lacking in decisive evidence. It is too painful to continue living like this. I might get mentally or physically sick again. What should I do? Then something happened that made me despair even more. It was my daughter's birthday, and my husband was going to buy a cake for her on his way home from work. It was a very delicious cake, made by a famous pâtissier, which she loved. But it was not something she could eat on a daily basis. So when I told her it was special this time, she jumped with glee. It's 6 p.m. The meal was almost ready. My husband has not come home yet. I text him, but he doesn't read my messages, and even though it's already 8 p.m., he still hasn't come home. I start eating dinner with my daughter. 10 p.m., he doesn't come home. My daughter is asleep. I'm used to him neglecting me, but this behavior toward my daughter is unforgivable. I reminded myself that I had to speak up for once today. It's 2 hours past midnight. My husband finally came home. He doesn't say anything when he comes home. He goes past the living room and goes straight to the bathroom. I follow and approach him there. Hey.
Oh, I didn't know you were up.
Hey, it's Jackie's birthday. What did you do with the cake? I'm tearing up as I speak.
Oh, I forgot. Of course I was working, right? I'm tired. Give me a break, okay?
Not one word of apology. It's easy to guess that he was with someone instead of working. His family doesn't matter to him anymore. I went to my bedroom in tears, thinking that I would not be able to question him even if I talked more. In bed, I bit my lip and cried, trying desperately to keep my voice down. I had no hope for the future in my life. I had given up on everything. And yet, the seasons change. Summer vacation was over. One day, it was the day of my daughter's presentation of her summer research. She told my husband and me every day that she was going to make an outstanding presentation and that we should definitely come. On the day of the presentation, my husband was ready to go. He ignored the birthday cake, but it was obvious that he wanted to show the parents and teacher at school that he was a family man. Oh, it's Jackie's parents. What a wonderful family you have. My husband was happy to hear this from the other parents.
No, no, no. My daughter wanted me to come. This is no big deal.
I give a rueful fake smile. We are actually just masquerading as a happy married couple. I am tempted to go around saying that. We enter the classroom, and soon after, the presentations begin. Jackie's classmates had their own research topics. Some brought dioramas to show off, while others presented the result of their research on electricity, plants, and environmental issues. As expected of sixth graders, they were very well prepared. As I was watching, Jackie went in front of the blackboard. She stood in front of the blackboard, took a deep breath, and began her presentation. I could feel some nervousness in her voice. My summer research is about my dad. Oh wow, you're so loved by your daughter. The parents next to me said that to my husband. Well, she's kind of like her daddy's girl. He shows a bashful expression. Jackie continues her presentation. My dad is a very handsome man. He was certainly the man of my dreams, and he is very good looking. Only on the outside though. He is a salesman for a pharmaceutical company. He often comes home after midnight. Even though he is busy, he always comes to work looking sharp and cool like today. During the summer vacation, I try to find out if my father is really busy with his work and what he does every day. Jackie's presentation was getting a little weird. After finishing the introduction, Jackie operated the computer connected to the projector and moved the presentation material to the screen in front of the blackboard. I followed my father closely to find out how he spends his working day. He wakes up at 7 a.m., eats breakfast prepared by my mother, goes to work at 8 a.m., and arrives at the office at 9 a.m. At 9:30, he goes out for his rounds. He is always accompanied by a female employee. Around 10 a.m., he goes to a cafe far from the office and makes out with this woman. The classroom is abuzz. My husband is flustered, but
I don't know what she means. What kids say, really. I don't know what she is talking about. Haha.
He's frantically trying to calm down the situation in the classroom. At 12, they move to a restaurant to have lunch together. And after lunch, they flirt again. Then at around 2 p.m., they visit the client's company and finally get to work. After the visit, he meets up with a woman again at around 3:30 p.m. and they go to a hotel. They stay at the hotel for about 2 hours, return to the office around 5 p.m., and leaves work at 6 p.m. Then they have dinner at a restaurant while flirting around.
Wait. Jackie, what are you talking about? Hey, ma'am, you have to stop this right now. What the hell is a teacher doing?
My husband is still trying to keep his cool, but he's sweating profusely. He's panicking so much that he's looking pale. Jackie's teacher, Miss Burns, said quietly, I'm sorry, please be quiet. She seems a little on edge. Let's go back in time. It was the day before the presentation. Jackie asked me to come into her room, and then she apologized. She told me that she had stumbled across evidence of the affair, that she knew that her dad was playing with fire, that she had researched it and made it her summer project, and that tomorrow she would present it in front of the crowd. But maybe that might humiliate me. She looked anxious. To be honest, I was surprised, but I was even more surprised by her ability to secretly follow her dad during the summer vacation, taking pictures and checking every detail of their interactions on social networking sites and messaging apps. I knew she was a strong girl, but I didn't expect her to be this strong. I wondered what kind of parent I would be to let my daughter do such a thing. But I also felt that this was the only way. My husband is a proud, self-conceited man, and I felt that he would wriggle his way out no matter what evidence I had, and I didn't have the confidence to go toe-to-toe with him. But with this, if I could get him in front of a room full of people, he would have to admit guilt. I apologized to my daughter and asked her to go through with the presentation. Don't worry about whether or not I will be embarrassed. I'm sorry. I know that was hard. Thank you, Jackie. I hugged her and cried. Jackie looked at me and said, I love you, Mommy. I can never forgive Dad for cheating on you. I'm sorry I scared you, but I will protect you. And it wasn't hard. It was fun being a detective. Tomorrow, we're gonna get to the bottom of this. Seeing my daughter shedding tears as we talked, I could feel her feeling so painfully, but she's really strong and dependable. Afterwards, she showed me her presentation materials, and she had a lot of evidence that I didn't have. With this, we could win. I knew we had won. And here we are. I'm now listening to the presentation with a great sense of calm because I had heard everything yesterday. I can even afford to enjoy watching my husband's reaction with a cool head. Jackie's presentation continues. The projector screen changes. There was a picture of a woman and my husband going into a hotel, enjoying a date on a holiday, and so on. I found out that my father does not play with me on holidays, but with some other woman. Then, the next screen shows a message exchange with the woman. The screen switches again. The screen shows a series of screenshots of the exchange. I had a good time with you today, babe.
I was happy to spend time with you, sweet cheeks. You were so cute today.
What? Just today? Oh.
Sorry, you're always cute. Kiss.
I guess it can't be helped. I forgive you. In exchange, let's go on a date next week. Jackie reads the messages in different voices. Sweet Cheeks is a woman, and Bay is my husband. Several parents burst out laughing uncontrollably at the name Sweet Cheeks and the content of the exchange. The students also burst into laughter.
Oh, please.
My husband, who is always so self-conceited, sounded pathetic. After the class calmed down, my daughter started to summarize her presentation. I've been investigating my father's true identity. It was a lie that he was busy with his work. This is because my father has been making out with a woman during his working hours. In other words, my father is having an affair with this woman. Having a relationship with another woman even though you are married is called cheating. My father is cheating on my mother. I have learned that my father is lousy father, husband, and member of society. These are the result of my research. She concluded with a smile. The classroom erupted in applause, and everyone in the room looked at my husband coldly. My husband sank to the cold floor of the classroom and was silent. He could not say anything back. There is another incoming attack. His phone has been ringing since a few minutes ago. He seems to be so shocked by his daughter's presentation that he doesn't notice. Your phone is ringing. He finally realizes what I'm saying and runs out of the classroom to answer the phone.
Yes. What?
The call was from the company. My daughter had mailed a copy of her project to the president of her dad's company. My father spends most of his working hours cheating on my mom. He also lies to me that he has to work on his days off and goes out with a woman instead of spending time with us. Please take strict action against adults who do not do their jobs. After the presentation, my husband and I left the school together. He was quiet until we arrived home. When we entered the house, my husband made a scene.
What the hell is going on?
My husband got irritated and hit me. At that moment, a person appeared at the door. He went to Zach as fast as a missile and grabbed him by the chest and shook him around as if he was a rag doll.
What have you done?
He screamed and slapped my husband at the same time. It was my father-in-law. My mother-in-law followed him. My parents appeared. Both sides of the family were there. I had called out to them, anticipating this turn of events. And then, my father-in-law spread out on the table a piece of paper with my daughter's research material printed on it.
With this much evidence, you can't get away with it. And don't you feel sorry as a parent for letting your daughter see you like this? Get down on your knees and apologize.
My father-in-law grabbed my husband's head and forced him to get down on his knees.
I'm sorry.
I looked down at my husband, who was down on his knees, tears and snot running down his nose, and told him, "Please sign the papers." He signed the divorce papers on the spot, and my husband was taken away by my parents-in-law. After that, thanks to the evidence my daughter had gathered for me, the divorce was finalized with a generous alimony payment. But still, I was worried about my daughter since she made such a presentation at school. I became a little popular because sweet cheeks became a buzzword. She was so open about it. All the parents were on my side. Whenever I met them on the street, they would give me lots of words of support and encouragement. Jackie's homeroom teacher talked to me later. She told me that my daughter had told her about the contents of the presentation before she made it. The teacher, who herself had experience in being cheated on, said that as a teacher she should have stopped it, but instead, she had encouraged her to do it. She gave me a kind smile. My ex-husband has been demoted to a lower department and is having a very hard time both physically and mentally. I heard that the other woman was also transferred to an office in a developing country and is no longer in this country. Everything is now settled. I'm now living a happy life with my daughter. I'm mentally calmer now that I'm away from my ex-husband. I have regained my life. My confidence is back, and I'm now employed again in the airline industry since my daughter started high school. I've had enough of marriage. I want to enjoy my energetic days to the fullest at my own pace. And when I am not working, I want to spend all my time with my daughter. Although my daughter, now in high school, is still rebellious, we can always talk to each other about anything as if we were friends. She sees me working hard at the airport. I want to be an independent and cool woman like my mom. She tells me with a twinkle in her eye, "I owe everything to you. I want to repay you with my life, and I will never, ever, ever make you unhappy." This winter break, my daughter and I will be traveling to New York City. I'm looking forward to Christmas and New Year in New York.
I do all the childcare. When a mom friend was at our house, my husband proudly declared that. That's not true, though. He's thrown all the childcare on me, and he's never even changed a diaper in his life. After the friend left, I confronted him. What do you mean by I'll do all the childcare? It's all lies. Why are you so angry? I am an active dad, so it's not strange to say that, right? Active dad? You've never done any childcare. Stop telling such lies. It's embarrassing. You're so cheeky. Don't talk anymore. Jonathan, seeming irritated, takes out a cigarette from his pocket and starts smoking next to the baby's crib. Wait a minute, what are you thinking? Smoking in a room with a baby? Then you guys can go elsewhere. I immediately picked up our daughter and evacuated to the next room. At that moment, I was silently fed up. I can't take it anymore. I don't want a big lying husband who doesn't take care of the kids or do the housework anymore. After this, I wanted to witness how his disguise gradually unraveled. My name is Catherine. I'm 30 years old and currently on childcare leave. My husband's name is Jonathan. We met through a friend's introduction. He's a bit of a show-off, but he's a good guy. Introduced with such a reputation, Jonathan was indeed a bright and lively young man. He worked as an office worker in a major company. He was highly trusted by those around him, and there were expectations for him at the company. As I was rather shy and withdrawn, he dazzled me, and I was attracted to him more and more. We started dating, and by the second year, Jonathan proposed, and I happily accepted. When we visited his parents, they warmly welcomed me. Well, what a lovely young lady. I'm happy to meet you. Jonathan, if you're marrying, prioritize family. Catherine, he may be a bit light-hearted, but please take care of him. With my in-laws, it seemed like we would get along well. Next, we visited my parents' house. My family consisted of my father, who worked for a large company, my stay-at-home mom, and my brother, Randy. A year ago, Randy went through a divorce and took custody of his 2-year-old daughter, Lila. He returned home and with our parents raised her. Jonathan introduced himself and greeted them. Nice to meet you. I'm Jonathan Ward. I've come to introduce myself and express my intention to marry Catherine. To ease his nervousness, the family casually chatted with him. I am delighted Catherine is getting married. Ah, what a wonderful young man. Catherine, make sure he doesn't end up like me. The cheerful greetings relieved me, and it seemed my parents also liked Jonathan. Later, Jonathan and I had a wedding ceremony, and we began living together about 2 hours away from my parents' house. Jonathan claimed to be busy with work and didn't help with household chores. Despite being newlyweds, I worked hard, and within a year of marriage, I discovered I was pregnant. When I shared this news with Jonathan, he was delighted. Am I going to be a dad? That's fantastic! Yes, let's build a happy family together. Of course. Can you help with household chores from now on? Yeah, I'll make an effort. I was relieved when Jonathan said that. Maybe he'll change after the baby's arrival. I'd appreciate it if he could help the housework. However, that expectation was quickly shattered. Jonathan continued to avoid any household chores. Even during my morning sickness, he warned me not to neglect housework. I tried discussing it with my husband multiple times, but each time Jonathan insisted that household chores were the wife's responsibility and didn't budge. I began to worry if it would be okay to bring a child into this situation. Around that time, I was approached by someone at a parental checkup at the maternity clinic. Excuse me, are you perhaps Jonathan's wife? Oh, if I remember correctly, you're Rachel, right? It was Rachel, Jonathan's colleague who attended our wedding. Rachel happily informed me. I heard from Jonathan you're pregnant, right? Actually, I am too. Really? Congratulations! When is your due date? Rachel's answer revealed that our due dates were only 2 weeks apart. We both rejoiced at this coincidence. We got along well, exchanged contact information, and headed home. That night, when I reported meeting Rachel to Jonathan, he said, Oh, Rachel works in the company's public relations. She's good at her job. Really? She's also pregnant. It might be nice if you become mom friends. Yes, I intend to. After that, Rachel and I started having tea together and exchanging information. We shared our anxiety as a pregnant woman, and Rachel became a reassuring ally for me. Eventually, I gave birth to a cute girl named Michaela. Both sets of parents visited the hospital and celebrated Michaela's birth. Jonathan, you've finally become a father. You'll be a good dad, I'm sure. Jonathan's unsuspecting father conveyed this with a smile. Jonathan responded confidently. Of course, I've taken childcare leave, so I'll be splendid hands-on dad. My mother and brother were also delighted with Jonathan's decision. Well, he's reliable. If it's Jonathan, he'll be fine. Later, I was discharged, and the three of us, Michaela, Jonathan, and I, started living together. Although Jonathan took 6 months of childcare leave, he didn't contribute anything at home. He didn't even pick up Michaela when she cried or feed her milk. On top of that, he took advantage of his company vacations for paternity leave to go out and have fun all the time. Despite that, he often posted photos of Michaela on his social media, proudly showcasing our daughter. I was becoming increasingly exasperated with Jonathan's behavior. Then one day, I really needed someone to do the shopping that day, so I asked Jonathan to drive me. I headed to the baby supply store and stocked up on milk and diapers. During that time, I had Jonathan held Michaela. At first, Jonathan made a displeased face. Hey, do I have to hold her? I'm worried she might spit up the milk. Just endure it for the time it takes to choose and carry the products. Fine, whatever. While shopping like that, we were suddenly approached. Catherine, and Jonathan too. It was Rachel, a mom friend who gave birth around the same time. She's also carrying a baby. Rachel, long time no see. How's motherhood treating you? Rachel showed a smiling face at my words. My husband helps me, so I'm managing. It's a bit early, but I'm thinking of returning to work soon. During such conversation, Rachel suddenly looked at Jonathan. Well, is Michaela being held by her dad? That's nice. Yeah, well, of course. Jonathan suddenly straightened up and answered. Then Rachel continued. Hey, if it's okay, can I take a picture of Jonathan? Huh? Our company puts a lot of effort into supporting employees with childcare. In my PR department, we are planning to share about parenting. An active dad taking childcare leave is just perfect. So, can I post Jonathan on social media? Upon hearing that, Jonathan's face lit up. If that's the case, I am happy to do it. Come on, Catherine. You've got heavy stuff, right? I'll take that. He abruptly took away the diapers and milk I was holding. Jonathan, you're a really good husband and dad. Rachel happily took many pictures of Jonathan, who was carrying Michaela in the baby carrier and holding diapers and milk. The photos were then posted on the social media site of the company Jonathan and Rachel worked for. And lo and behold, it got a huge response. Social media was filled with praises for Jonathan, and it seemed to contribute to enhancing company's image. Upon hearing this, Jonathan was elated throughout. I've become like the representative of active dads, you know. You must be proud too, right? Well, it would be nice if you were truly an active dad, but... As I said this, I couldn't tell if Jonathan was paying attention or not. Despite being hailed as an ideal active dad, he never contributed to childcare. Yet, he continued to post numerous photos on social media of Michaela, creating an illusion of active involvement in parenting. Jonathan's personal social media followers have also increased. He had even changed his account name to Super Dad Jonathan's Parenting Adventures. Praised by followers and complimented by both sets of parents in my family, Jonathan was getting more and more carried away. In reality, he was hardly involved with Michaela. One day, when Rachel was visiting us at our house, Rachel said, "The response to that photo was incredible. Our company even gained a positive image as an understanding place for employees with children. Thank you so much." After Rachel conveyed this to us, Jonathan responded proudly, "Well, I've just been showcasing my usual self." Just as I was thinking about that, Rachel turned to me and said, "Catherine, you must be happy. Having such a wonderful husband must be a big help, right?" In a boastful tone, Jonathan then exclaimed, "Of course, I handle all the parenting duties." Suddenly, he lifted Michaela from the baby bed with a proud expression, causing Michaela to start crying. Seeing this, Rachel looked surprised. I quickly interjected, "Stop it, she was finally sleeping." I hurriedly took Michaela from Jonathan and nursed her. Seeing this scene, Rachel said, "Well, it's time for me to go," and left in a hurry. After Rachel left, I confronted Jonathan. "What's this about you doing all the parenting? It's all lies." "Why are you so upset? I am an active dad. It's not weird to say that, right?" "Active dad? You haven't done any parenting at all. Stop lying like that. It's embarrassing." Rachel left because she found it suspicious. "You're so annoying. Shut up." Irritated, he took out a cigarette from his pocket and started smoking next to the baby bed. "Hey, what are you thinking, smoking in a room with a baby?" "Then you guys can go somewhere else." I immediately picked up Michaela and sought refuge in the adjacent room. At that moment, I had silently reached my limit. I couldn't stand a husband who didn't contribute to parenting and household chores, constantly lying. Through the gap in the door, I took a photo of Jonathan continuing to smoke and sent it to someone. The next Sunday, my family was supposed to visit our house to see Michaela. Jonathan warmly welcomed my family. "Thank you for coming, Mom, Dad, Randy." "Sorry to bother you, Jonathan. I've been seeing your active dad posts on social media." Upon hearing this, Jonathan repeated that same line. "Well, I handle all the parenting duties." Hearing this, my mother smiled. "Is that so? Then let's see your active dad skills right away." "Huh?" Seeing Jonathan hesitating, my mother, while holding Michaela, told him, "Oh, it seems like the diaper is wet, Jonathan. Could you change it?" My husband looked at me as if seeking help. Ignoring him, I went to the kitchen to make tea. Well, the diaper, right?" My father talked to Jonathan, who was confused. "What's the matter? Don't tell me you don't even know where the diaper is." No, that's not it. That's strange. It was here just a moment ago." As Jonathan visibly started to panic, my brother-in-law intervened. "Look, Jonathan, it's right there on the sofa." "Oh, you're right. I didn't realize it was here." With a faint smile, Jonathan picked up the diaper. However, afterward, he seemed unsure of what to do next, freezing in front of Michaela. In the midst of this, my mother urged him. "You're an active dad, right? Naturally, you can change a diaper. Come on, give it a try." Unbeknownst to Jonathan, my father, mother, and brother had surrounded him, observing with the cold eyes. Jonathan was sweating and stood there, unsure of what to do in front of Michaela. Eventually, my brother sighed and spoke up. "Let me do it." He swiftly took the diaper from Jonathan's hand and efficiently changed Michaela's diaper. Without missing a beat, my mother intervened. "Jonathan, are you sure you're an active dad?" Surprised, Jonathan denied it. "No, that's not true. I'm a great active dad." My father continued. "Randy's ex-wife was just like you, so I figured it out immediately. You put on a good show outside, but in reality, you leave all the parenting to your partner, right? Yes, that was the reason for Randy's divorce, his ex-wife's neglect of parenting. That's why my family is strict on those who don't contribute to parenting despite being parents. Actually, I received this photo from Catherine yesterday." She confronted Jonathan with the picture I took, showing him smoking next to the baby bed. This is... My father glared at Jonathan. "Don't do such things. It's disrespectful even to the concept of being a father. In reality, you were leaving all the parenting to Catherine, weren't you? And yet, you had the audacity to claim to be an active dad. But isn't parenting supposed to be the wife's job?" As Jonathan tries to justify himself, my brother Randy coldly retorts. "Parenting is a responsibility for both parents, regardless of gender. Your attempt to pose as a caring dad is quite despicable." The moment Jonathan groaned, the doorbell rang. It was Jonathan's parents who came to our house. "Huh? Mom and Dad? Why?" Yes, I had also arranged for Jonathan's parents to come at the same time. Of course, I had sent them the photos of Jonathan smoking, along with a report on his history of neglecting parenting duties. Jonathan's parents bowed deeply, expressing their apologies. "Catherine, I'm sorry for my foolish son." "Please do as you wish from now on, Catherine." "That's right. Well, then, it's unfortunate, but we're getting a divorce." "What? Divorce?" It was first time Jonathan was shocked. "Divorce is a problem. I'm recognized as an active dad," he yelled in protest. In response, I sternly rebuked him. "Shut up. We don't need a lying father who doesn't do household chores or parenting for Michaela. We're getting a divorce. I'll take custody of our daughter." That's... As Jonathan was shocked, I delivered the final blow. "You'll log into your social media from your computer, right? I posted your true nature on your social media accounts earlier." "Huh?" Yes, I exposed Jonathan's actions on social media along with a picture of him smoking. Jonathan frantically looked at his phone and screamed. "What is this? There are lots of comments saying liar and betrayed. What are you going to do about this?" "It's all your own doing. Finally revealing your true colors, and here I am feeling refreshed without you." My image as a devoted father. Jonathan screamed in a state of near madness. His in-laws dragged him away, and later the divorce between him and me was finalized. He had to pay compensation for mental distress, undergo asset division, and pay half of the child support in a lump sum. We agreed on monthly payments for the remaining child support. Due to my exposure of his true self on social media, Jonathan lost his standing as a devoted father. Even Rachel, a mom friend, removed Jonathan's picture from the company's social media, expressing disbelief. She said that she never thought he was that kind of person. His refreshing image as a devoted father at work has completely crumbled. Unable to endure being looked at with disdain, Jonathan ultimately resigned from the company. Currently, it seems he's doing physical labor at a construction company known by his parents' acquaintances, earning Michaela's child support. Hopefully, he learns from this and reflects on his actions. On the other hand, I, along with Michaela, have returned to my parents' home and am raising my child. My parents and brother also help with childcare. My niece and daughter are growing up together like sisters, which is heartwarming. By the way, I occasionally let Michaela meet my in-laws, and they also cherish her like their granddaughter. From now on, I want to embrace a bright life, looking forward to my daughter's growth.
Hey, please, wait! Help me! Despite desperately shouting from the company premises, my husband only smirked defiantly. Yes, my hands are broken and I can't move them as I would like. Unable to unlock the car, I had no choice but to throw my body against the car door. It was summer. Sweat pours out of me and I start to feel sick in the 100-degree-plus seat. Even seeing me like that, my husband didn't change his expression at all. On the contrary, he waved his hand cheerfully and disappeared somewhere, seeming to enjoy himself. In that moment, everything went pitch black, and I found myself standing on the brink of despair. Why am I going through this? If it continues like this, my body will really go haywire. Someone, please help me. As the discomfort grows, my consciousness gradually fades. Then I heard unexpected voices. It was the voices of unfamiliar people. My name is Maggie, and I'm 29 years old. I'm just an ordinary office worker in a general company. I met my husband Keith 3 years ago, and we got married just a year ago. We initially got to know each other through work, so we have a mutual understanding of each other's duties. When I said I want to continue working even after getting married, he smiled, gently.
It's fine, isn't it? Nowadays, it's normal for women to work actively.
But your mom was a homemaker, right? And before you also said you wanted me to be a homemaker when we got married.
Don't worry about that. I just wanted you to live in a way that feels right for you.
Really? Is it okay for me to keep working?
Of course. Honestly, it would be more helpful if both of us worked until we have children.
Thank you, Keith. I'll make sure to manage household matters properly too. In response to that, my husband gently stroked my head, saying,
You don't have to push yourself.
I had always loved how he respected my feelings to the fullest since the early days of our relationship. But when did it start? When did he, who used to be so kind, suddenly become cold and distant? The first time I felt a sense of discomfort was about 6 months into our marriage, on a certain day. During this time, my work was hectic, and I was dealing with days filled with continuous overtime. With a lot on my plate, and having assumed a managerial position at a young age, I had to approach my duties with a sense of responsibility. On the other hand, my husband's company rarely required overtime. Since promotions were mostly based on a fixed schedule, he usually returned home earlier than I did. On this particular day, when I returned home, I found my husband lying on the sofa, playing video games. His suit and socks were strewn about, and there was no preparation for dinner. The used dishes were left as they were. Suppressing in a sigh that seemed ready to escape, I rolled up my sleeves and started doing the dishes. At that moment, without turning his face towards me, my husband continued to focus on the game screen and casually said,
Hey, is dinner ready yet? I'm pretty hungry, you know.
Upon hearing those words, my hands, which were washing dishes, came to a halt. The juggling act between work and household chores seemed to have reached its limit for my mind and body. Normally, I could have brushed it off with a sorry or I'll prepare it soon, but on this day, I just couldn't ignore my husband's words. Still standing in the kitchen, I suddenly realized I was raising my voice at him. What's that about? I just got home, you know. If you're going to say that, couldn't you at least do the dishes or make some simple side dishes?
Huh? Why me? Aren't household chores your responsibility?
My responsibility? Why? We both work.
Well, you brought it up. When we got married, you said, I'll do my best with household chores too.
Of course, I said that. But does that mean I have to take on all the burden? Isn't that unfair?
Then quit your job. Well, my salary isn't that high, and I can't afford to give you an allowance. But if that's okay with you, I can do that.
What is that? I never expected to hear such things, and I found myself at a loss for words. Standing there, dumbfounded, he chuckled as if mocking me.
What? Were you thinking selfishly? Like wanting to work but not do household chores or something?
No, that's not it. I just want you to help out a bit.
Help out? Didn't you decide to handle both work and household chores on your own? Why should I have to help? It just doesn't make sense.
Isn't it normal for couples who both work to share household responsibilities? I never thought you'd say something like that.
Huh? Don't shift the blame onto me. You decided that on your own, so take responsibility for it. Okay?
My husband, almost spitting the words out, said that, and once again began to focus on the game. Unable to retort any further, I held back the welling tears and could only desperately continue with the household chores. Why do I have to go through all this alone? We are a married couple. Couldn't he help a little? I just want to have a happy marriage. What's wrong with that? From this day onward, my husband's words and actions escalated rapidly. Even if he came home late due to overtime, he started hurling abusive words at me.
Hey, why are you always so late? How long do you intend to keep dinner waiting?
Sorry, but I did tell you beforehand that I would be late today before leaving for work.
Huh? Like I would know that? You're using work as an excuse. Typical of a woman to abandon household chores.
No, I didn't mean to neglect chores with a broom.
Then, what is it? The result of prioritizing work is this, right? Ah, I thought I married a good wife, but I feel like I've been betrayed.
You don't have to say it like that. Faced with me on the verge of tears, my husband sighed as if it were a bother. The kindness reminiscent of our early days of dating was nowhere to be found, replaced only by harsh words. Each day, my mind and body approached their limits within this challenging routine. Despite that, what made me want to continue the marriage was the presence of my in-laws. They lived about an hour away by car from our modest apartment, and they regularly visited, bringing delicious cakes and sweets from my favorite shops. Each time, they would speak kind words to me. I loved how they treated me with affection, like their own daughter. Today, once again, my in-laws showed up with smiling faces.
Today, Mom and I stopped by Maggie's favorite shop, and they had a new dessert on sale.
Oh, come on. We were so excited and bought it all for Maggie. It genuinely makes me happy
when they take actions with me in mind. Accepting the paper bag handed over by my father-in-law, I expressed my gratitude with a beaming smile. Thank you so much, Mom and Dad. I'm really grateful for your thoughtfulness. Always.
What are you saying? Maggie is our precious daughter, so it's only natural. Keith seems to be inviting you, and I'm grateful for you for marrying someone as lovely as you.
No, it's not like that. I'm always causing trouble for Keith.
What are you talking about? Keith is the one causing trouble, isn't he? He's the type who doesn't do any household chores.
That's right. That kid has a bit of a sloppy side. If anything happens, feel free to consult with us anytime, okay? Sorry. As they were having such a conversation, my husband barged in at just the right moment. He pulled me close and began to act like a happily married couple.
Both Mom and Dad worry too much. We get along really well, and we share the household chores properly. Really? I can't believe you can do such skillful things.
That's right. You're just handing everything over to Maggie.
That's not true. I do my share of household chores since Maggie is working, you know. What about it, Maggie?
I shuddered involuntarily at my husband's smiling face. How could he tell such lies as effortlessly as breathing? Nevertheless, I couldn't afford to cause trouble for my in-laws because of me. I desperately responded with a smile that said, "Yeah, it seems that way." Seeing that, my in-laws smiled happily. That's right. I must not ruin this happiness. For the sake of my beloved in-laws, I had to endure. Every time my in-laws visited, I repeated the act of pretending to get along well with my husband. One day, something happened. After work, I fell on the stairs at the station, resulting in fractures in both arms. Bystanders called an ambulance, and I had to be transported to the hospital for emergency treatment. I was forced to stay in the hospital for a while. Since my job involves using a computer, this injury could impact my work. When I contacted the company and explained the situation, they told me not to push myself and take a break, so I decided to take about 2 months off. Both the injury and the need to take time off from work were entirely due to my own carelessness, so there was no helping it. But what saddened me the most was that my husband didn't visit me once during my hospitalization. After about 2 weeks in the hospital, I was discharged. I had informed my husband of my discharge date, but there was no response from him. Maybe Keith won't come to pick me up after all. Unable to move both arms, I couldn't carry my belongings and take the train home. I had no choice but to pick up a taxi at the hospital and go home. While pondering such thoughts, I headed to the hospital's main entrance with the assistance of a nurse. There, I was met by my husband, waiting with a refreshing smile.
Maggie, I've been waiting for you.
Huh? Keith, why?
Why? Because I was worried, of course. I decided to come and pick you up. You can't go home alone when you can't use both hands.
But I contacted you, and you didn't reply at all.
Sorry. I've been busy too. Anyway, let's go home quickly, okay? You must be tired of the hospital life, right?
My husband received my belongings from the nurse, loaded them onto the car's cargo area, and then opened the passenger seat door, seemingly guiding me. Observing him with his smart demeanor, the nurses were all cheering and getting excited. I nodded at them, then got into the car with complex emotions. As we drove, my husband kept repeating trivial stories. Until I was hospitalized, he used to hurl verbal abuse at me and maintain a cold attitude every day. I wondered what had brought about this change. With a sudden shift to kindness, I felt a sense of distrust towards my husband, contrary to how things were before. Ignoring my feelings, my husband parked the car in the parking lot of a park about 10 minutes from our home and slowly began to speak.
Well, from here, drive back home on your own.
Huh? Wait a minute. Are you kidding? This has to be a joke, right?
A joke? After neglecting household chores for 2 weeks, it's only natural that you face the consequences.
Wait, I still can't use both hands, and the sensation in my arms hasn't fully returned. Driving back alone from here...
Shut up. Do you even realize how much I struggled because of you?
My shoulders involuntarily twitched at the sound of my husband's shouting. He hadn't come to pick me up out of kindness. He considered my 2 weeks of hospitalization as neglecting household chores and had purposely come to pick me up to administer punishment, specifically to make me drive. My husband unfastened only his seatbelt and tried to exit the car. As he stepped outside to close the door, I pleaded desperately with him. Wait, Keith. Once I've healed, I promise I'll take care of the household chores properly.
You've been slacking off for 2 weeks already, haven't you? Excuses won't work now.
Please, forgive me. If I'm left behind in this intense atmosphere at work, it will only get worse by the time I reach the venue.
I don't care. Fix your hands quickly and come out on your own.
That's... The husband coldly uttered his words and forcefully slammed the car door shut. To make matters worse, he locked it from the outside. Hey, please, wait, help. Desperately, I raised my voice from inside the car. However, the husband just smirked mockingly. The sensation in both hands has yet to fully return. Unable to open the car lock from the inside, I had no choice but to throw my body against the door. No matter how many times I tried to calm down, my body remained unresponsive. It was summer, with temperatures exceeding 100 degrees Fahrenheit. Sweating profusely in the scorching heat, I began to feel nauseous. Despite witnessing my condition, my husband showed no change in expression. On the contrary, he happily waved and disappeared somewhere. In that moment, everything in front of me went pitch black, and I found myself standing on the brink of despair. Why am I in such a situation? If things continue like this, my body might truly go awry. Someone, please help. As the discomfort grew, my consciousness gradually drifted away. I no longer had the energy to move my body, and my vision began to blur. Maybe it's over. Just as I was about to close my eyes,
Maggie!
I wake up with a start at the loud call. Looking out the window, my in-laws continue to call my name with pale faces. Father! Mother!
Are you okay? The keys? Can't you open it?
Oh no! Maggie's arm! My father-in-law hurriedly tries to open the door, but it doesn't budge because it's locked. Then he grabs a nearby concrete block and smashes it against the rear window with all his might. After repeating this a few times, cracks gradually appear on the window and it slowly shatters. Through the broken area, my father-in-law reaches in and unlocks the car from the inside.
Maggie, are you okay?
Being pulled out of the car by my in-laws, I was shedding tears of relief. Yeah. It was scary. I was so scared. Holding me gently like a child, my mother-in-law comforted me. When I heard the story, it turns out they were on their way to our house. Passing by the park, they noticed our car, and recognizing the license plate, they found me in a dazed state inside.
Tell us, what happened?
Explaining to my father-in-law, who was looking at me with a serious gaze, I recounted what had occurred. The expressions of my in-laws improved rapidly as they learned the truth.
Sorry, Maggie. I can't believe Keith would do something so terrible.
No, I'm sorry for keeping quiet too. I can't take it anymore after this incident.
Yeah, I understand. We'll protect you. So don't worry.
That's right. You don't have to worry anymore. Mom, Dad.
Anyway, let's go and put an end to all of this.
My in-laws got into their car, and my father-in-law drove us towards our home where my husband was waiting. When my father-in-law rang the intercom, my husband cheerfully appeared. However, as soon as he noticed me behind my father-in-law, his face contorted in an instant.
Why? Maggie, why are you here?
From the expressions of my in-laws, he probably understood everything. My husband's face rapidly turned pale.
Keith, I heard everything from Maggie.
My husband clearly appeared disturbed by the cold statement.
No, it's a misunderstanding. It's just that...
My father-in-law, grabbing his arm by the collar, shouted at him as he began making excuses.
Don't mess around. Hurting such a wonderful wife like this? How much of a scumbag are you, huh? Pretending to get along in front of us and secretly hurting her like this? As a man, you're finished. No, I just want Maggie to become a good wife.
A good wife? Coming from you, who isn't a good husband, you idiot? I'm truly disappointed in you. I'm cutting off our parent-child relationship. Never come back home again. Scum like you can live alone in loneliness. Suffer on your own.
No way. Mom, please say something to her.
His plea was rejected as my mother-in-law shook her head. In her place, I bluntly stated, "You've done more than enough awful things to me. Perhaps losing your family is the payback you deserve."
No, I don't want that. Please, don't abandon me. No, I can't take it.
My husband clutched his head and crumbled to the floor from his knees. Despite his tearful apologies, I couldn't bring myself to forgive him. I decided to rely on my in-laws until I found a new place to live. With my parents-in-law as witnesses, I divorced my husband. Perhaps fearing his parents, Keith readily signed the divorce papers. Instead of seeking alimony, I demanded he never to be involved in my life again. Since we had common colleagues at work, news of our divorce quickly spread. Afterward, Keith seemed to have a hard time at work, repeatedly being late or absent without notice. It seemed like it was only a matter of time before he would be fired. But I felt no sympathy for him. Let him sit behind bars and suffer for all I care. I can never thank my supportive parents-in-law enough for saving me at that time and continuing to support me. They are my benefactors. I hope to repay my in-laws properly in the future, no matter how it takes shape. For now, let's focus on fully recovering from the injuries.
Marianne, you lack compassion. Do you know how I felt accepting your pregnancy? Men can't just instantly brace themselves when they hear about a pregnancy, and yet you kept on pressing me about it. You really only think about yourself.
I've had enough. Maybe it's time to lay it all out. Just as I reached for the shelf, my father-in-law spoke up. I'm Marianne. I live with my husband, Hank, and his parents, making us a family of 4. My college friends and colleagues often ask me how I manage to live with my in-laws, but we get along really well. Honestly, I used to think living with in-laws was absolutely out of the question before I got married. I didn't want to get caught up in the typical mother-in-law and daughter-in-law issues. But just before our wedding, my father-in-law, Paul, had a serious accident. That incident led us to start living together, and I realized they are incredibly kind and thoughtful people. My mother-in-law, Susan, who's been a homemaker all her life, cooks amazing meals. I join her in the kitchen on weekends, but during the week, she insists on doing all the household chores herself, saying, "You're tired from work." The most I help with is washing the dishes. Paul also helps out with chores when he has time. I know he even gives her shoulder massages after she's done with her work. Seeing them together, they seem like such a wonderful couple. I want Hank and me to be like them. I'm really excited about our future. Then, 6 months into our marriage, I found out I was pregnant. Concerned about my health, Paul drove me to the doctor. He waited in the waiting room. Susan accompanied me all the way to the exam room. When they found out about the pregnancy, her eyes sparkled with excitement, telling me she'd take care of it. Having her, who was as thrilled as if it were her own news, and Paul always smiling at us, I'm so grateful they were there for me. But my husband, who should have been the happiest, looked unsettled when he heard about the pregnancy. A child is a life-changing event. Naturally, a husband would feel a bit of fear. Yet, I believed that, over time, he would come to embrace his role as a father. I tried to convince myself that he was just shaken by the sudden news. But his behavior felt more and more off as my pregnancy progressed. He avoided any talk about the baby, didn't engage even when his parents talked about their first grandchild, and started retreating to his room after dinner. He would go out on weekends too. Watching him, my anxiety grew. His parents seemed to sense his change as well. Paul would occasionally try to talk to him in his room, and Susan scolded him, saying, "You should be more considerate of your pregnant wife." Throughout this time, they continued to care about how I felt and my health. Things couldn't continue like this. I truly appreciated the kindness of my in-laws. But without uniting with my husband, our future wouldn't be bright. I decided it was time to talk to Hank. Hey, aren't you happy about the baby?
No, it's not that. It's just a feeling I can't understand. I'm really tired. Can we talk another time? And my room is my private space, my only place to relax. Please, don't come in for heavy talks. I was infuriated by his evasive attitude, but I couldn't just let this go. Our child's future was at stake. I tried to calm my anger and chose my words carefully. All right, I understand. So, when can we talk? I don't know. Okay, I'll check back later. I really wanted to talk. Ideally, I should have pressed the issue, but this was important. I didn't want to make things worse by pushing him. It wouldn't be meaningful unless we could have a serious conversation. So, I decided to wait for another opportunity. But every time I tried to talk, he would say, "I'm tired," or "Not now," and avoid it. I was at my wits' end. I couldn't think of anything but to take a firmer approach. A week later, I stood in front of his room. What? He looked at me, annoyed. I shouldn't back down. I've waited long enough. Our baby will only be inside me for 9 months. I couldn't afford to take my time. About the baby. Oh, that again? I don't want to hear it. You need to listen today. This can't wait any longer. What's with your attitude? You don't seem happy about the baby. So, what if I'm not?
You're being so selfish. Did you think pregnancy happens alone? Of course not.
Well, I never wanted a kid.
But you're the one who refused birth control.
I didn't think it would happen so fast.
And what does that mean? You can't be happy about the baby?
Not really. Well, my parents are happy, so that's good, right? I guess I did my duty as a son.
What? Children aren't tools for pleasing parents.
Is that so?
You don't seem to be changing your mind.
And what if I'm not?
I'll raise the baby alone.
What? What does that mean?
Exactly what I said. I'll divorce you and raise the child myself. A father who doesn't want his own child is only harmful. Suddenly, he pressed me against the door with all his might, expressionless.
Who do you think you are? Huh? You have some nerve suggesting divorce. You think I'll be the one getting divorced? Don't talk such nonsense.
I felt like crying from the shock. My once kind husband had changed completely. The fact that he wasn't happy about the pregnancy tore me apart. But I didn't want to cry or show any weakness. I wanted to be strong. I closed my eyes tightly, and suddenly Hank's hand released my shoulder with a loud thud. When I opened my eyes, I saw him crouching, holding his head, and my mother-in-law Susan, looking furious, holding a chopping board, was there.
You idiot!
What are you doing to Marianne? Your job is to protect her, and instead you're pinning her down. Disgraceful! She was furiously waving the chopping board. Hank couldn't resist and seemed even smaller. Susan. She turned to me and offered the chopping board.
I'm sorry, Marianne. Here, it's your turn now.
Hank had indeed hurt me and our child, but I couldn't bring myself to hit him as he shrank in fear.
You're such a kind person, sweetheart. You could be giving this foolish son a piece of your mind. Hank, what's with your attitude lately? Aren't you prepared to be a father? Absolutely disgraceful, you idiot. It's not that. I'm just scared. Men suddenly become fathers. Women feel the baby growing and moving, becoming a mother. But I don't have that. So I become a father all at once. How can I be confident? It's not like I haven't thought about it. What are you saying? That's a poor excuse for your behavior.
She raised the chopping board again. Susan, it's okay now.
But
really, it's okay. Thanks to you, I heard his true feelings. Thank you, Susan. My husband was just deep in thought. He does care about our child. He just hadn't fully realized it. He was just scared. At that moment, I wanted to believe he had spoken his true feelings. Though, in reality, they might have been just excuses. I just didn't want to admit that fact. That day, when Paul came home, Hank was taken aback. His attitude seemed to soften, but people's personalities don't change that easily. And 6 months later, I gave birth to twins. My in-laws rushed to the hospital and congratulated me. Hank, who came in with them, was smiling.
Here, this is for the babies.
He handed me a paper bag. It looked like something from a fast food restaurant for a baby gift.
Really, Hank's cluelessness might be our fault. A paper bag for a baby gift is unthinkable. Well, bringing a gift shows some fatherly awareness, I guess.
Susan seemed pleased with Hank's action, despite her words. I took the bag, unsealed, and reached inside. 2 pink baby outfits.
A pink for boys? Well, these days, we shouldn't say things like, because it's a boy or a girl.
I threw the pink baby outfits into the trash, while she happily talked. Hank's mouth twisted into a smirk when he saw it. But my in-laws were in a panic, not knowing the reason.
Marianne, what are you doing? That's not like you. Our son chose those with care. How could you throw them in the trash? Didn't you like the color? He deserves an apology for this.
My in-laws, always sensible, were troubled and scolded me. It's unbelievable that he's their son. Did you look at the tags?
Huh?
She reached into the trash can and pulled out the baby clothes.
This one says Venus, and this one says Luna. Wait, these aren't brand new, are they? If you look closely, they're yellowed. Hank, are these second-hand?
Both parents were shaking, but they seemed unable to get angry. They probably thought Hank bought them with good intentions, even if they were second-hand.
Marianne, you're pretty awful, you know that? I chose these second-hand clothes thinking about our babies. You just threw them in the trash. How cold. Mom and Dad, you see this, right? This is our true nature.
The parents fell silent. Hank, encouraged by this, continued his attack.
Marianne, you lack compassion. Do you know how I felt accepting your pregnancy? Men can't just instantly brace themselves when they hear about a pregnancy. And yet, you kept on pressing me about it. You really only think about yourself.
I've had enough. Maybe it's time to lay it all out. Just as I reached for the shelf, my father-in-law spoke up.
The only one who's self-centered here is you, Hank. What? Why me? A woman who's just given birth can be emotionally unstable. Giving birth is a big deal. She might cry over small things, get angry, or feel uncontrollable emotions. But we fathers should accept that. She gave birth to our precious children. Shouldn't we be grateful for that? Yet you only blame Marianne, who's just giving birth. Who's the selfish one here? You're pathetic. No, I mean, I knew that, but she threw away the gift I gave her. That's terrible, isn't it?
Yes, she did something terrible. Marianne, I should tell you first. I'm sorry, you didn't need to apologize.
What?
I would have done the same. Who would want to dress their babies in faded, yellowed clothes? You should want to give them a nice outfit for their first change. Did you even think at all? You spent money on this? No, Susan, he didn't spend any money.
Oh, really? How do you know?
Because he got them from Venus and Luna's mother.
Who?
Didn't you see the names on the tags? Venus and Luna? Hank's expression changed visibly. This was amusing in its own way.
What do you mean?
They belonged to Hank's mistress's children.
What?
Hank, you're disgusting. You approached a woman at work who has twins just to spite me? To harass me? Isn't that right? She's married too, isn't she? Here's the proof. I placed an envelope on the bed, exposing my husband's affair right after giving birth. Certainly a rare experience, but it's okay. I don't need such a husband. Hank was the first to reach for the envelope. He was slapped by Susan, and Paul ended up holding the envelope.
Wait, Dad, give that to me. Marianne's just crazy from the childbirth. I'm your real child, right? Marianne's just my wife, your daughter-in-law. She's a stranger. Marianne is our daughter. It's obvious whom to believe based on your behavior.
Hank and I work at the same company. Even on maternity leave, information is easy to come by. His colleagues spilled everything. Hiring a detective agency to gather evidence was simple.
You, get out of here now. Don't think you could come back home. You're no longer our son. Don't ever show your face again. Wait, don't you understand me? I wanted to enjoy more time just the two of us, but she got pregnant on her own.
Be quiet. Marianne, sweetheart, I'm so sorry. I'm sorry for raising such a child. I'm sorry. She was crying. My strong-willed mother-in-law. I thought she might raise her fist, but instead she clenched her hands and wept. The only thing you can do now is pay alimony. Pay whatever amount she asks for.
What? Why? This was just a little fling, and she's partly to blame for not understanding my feelings. Hey, Marianne, you get where I'm coming from, right? I just wanted to cherish more time with just the two of us. You feel the same, don't you?
He really only thinks about himself. It's always me, me, me. I don't understand your feelings, and I don't need to. Sign the divorce papers right now. I thrust the divorce papers at him, and his face stiffened further. It's hard to comprehend his feelings. Why make such a face? Why refuse divorce after cheating? And why take such spiteful actions just hours after I gave birth? The alimony will be $73,000. I'll also claim $30,000 from the woman. You're really the worst. To think you'd approach a woman with twins out of spite? That's just disgusting. Oh, I said disgusting in front of your parents. Sorry about that, Susan and Paul.
No, you're right. My son is disgusting. Stop dawdling and sign the divorce papers.
Initially, my husband kept refusing, but he couldn't keep defying his own parents, and reluctantly signed the divorce papers. Susan checked every word and then signed the witness section without hesitation. Paul did the same.
Marianne, are you sure it's okay for me to submit these to the office?
Yes, I have no doubts. The only sad part is that we won't be family anymore.
What are you talking about, sweetheart? Blood relation or not, you're our daughter. That's a fact that will never change. Susan, stay with Marianne. I'll take responsibility for submitting these. And I'll make sure Hank leaves here. Don't worry.
Thank you.
Wait a minute. I haven't even seen my daughters yet. Just a quick look at my cute girls. Enough. There's no way we're letting you see them.
Paul grabbed Hank by the scruff of his neck and dragged him out of the hospital room. Did he say daughters? My babies are 2 boys. He never showed interest in his own babies until the end. Susan, I'm sorry.
Why are you apologizing? You have nothing to apologize for, Marianne. We'll always be on your and your son's side. We're still family.
I couldn't help but sob. They were so kind. I had decided not to cry as long as he was in the room. I did well, I think. I showed my tears for the last time, determined to be a strong mother. Our future is bright after all. 10 days later, I was discharged from the hospital with the twins and returned to my in-laws' house. I had lost my parents at a young age and had no other relatives. My in-laws welcomed me warmly even after the divorce. With their help, I successfully received the alimony. I owe them so much. My ex-husband was transferred to a regional branch after his affair was exposed. The office clerk, his mistress, was forced to resign. When I return from maternity leave, they won't be there. It will be a much more comfortable work environment. I initially resisted relying on my in-laws after the divorce, but they continued to support me and the kids as before. They respected my decision not to take child support. I didn't want to raise my children with his money. Susan understood.
Don't worry about money. With the 3 of us working together, we can overcome anything. 3 people make a strong team.
Thank you. Raising twins will be challenging, but I have my children and in-laws by my side. I feel like I can do anything. If I have to thank my ex-husband for one thing, it's for introducing me to his parents. If anything happens to them, I'll definitely be there to help. We are a family after all. I collapsed due to stress-induced gastric ulcer and overwork and was rushed to the hospital. Then my husband, who had treated me like a slave for a long time, appeared in the hospital room.
Collapsing from overwork is just an exaggeration, especially for a carefree housewife like you.
That's because you...
What's the matter with me? You've got something to complain about?
My husband glared at me with bloodshot eyes, and I shrank back. I have to stay in the hospital. My body has to heal.
Then who's going to do the housework during that time? Huh?
Well...
Stop making excuses about hospitalization and neglecting housework. Get discharged soon and take care of the chores.
My husband violently kicked my bed while I was sleeping. The impact ran through my body and I staggered.
I took you in, even though you have nothing. You should serve me and do the housework perfectly. I'm the one supporting a wife who's only good for that much.
At that moment, I reached my limit. I couldn't stand being with someone like him any longer. Right after that, I noticed a figure behind my husband. Gathering my strength, I smiled at him. "Is that all you want to say?" Turning around on the spot, my husband instantly turned pale. "My name is Gabriella, and I'm 28 years old. My parents divorced when I was young, and the mother who took me in passed away from illness a few years ago. With no family to rely on, I had an intense longing to have a marriage and a home. I had been working in accounting at a small company for a long time when, one day, a colleague introduced me to a man. That man turned out to be Keith, who would later become my husband. Keith was working at his father's company, poised to be the next successor. I was increasingly drawn to him, thanks to his promising future and lively personality. It seemed Keith also liked me, and one day he said something like this.
I like refined women like you, Gabriella. Gabriella, you fit my ideal perfectly.
I am not so much refined as I am reserved, unable to clearly express my opinions. However, it seems that such a trait unexpectedly captured Keith's heart. We dated without any problems for about a year, and on our first anniversary, Keith proposed to me.
Gabriella, let's get married. Please, accept this.
Of course, yes. Thank you. I'm so happy. Filled with joy, I accepted the ring he offered. As I gazed at it with fascination, Keith said teasingly,
Isn't this what they call a Cinderella story? You with no background marrying me, the next company president.
I felt somewhat hurt, as if my lack of parents was being looked down upon. I'm not marrying you because you're the next company president, you know?
Yeah, true. Well then, Gabriella, let's get along from now on.
And so we went to visit Keith's parents' house. His family consisted of his father, who served as the company president, his mother, who was the managing director, and his sister, Maggie, who had married and moved out. They welcomed me warmly. Maggie opened the door with a big smile. Well, well, Keith bringing such a lovely lady. Come on in. Gabriella, right? You're a beautiful person, quite the opposite of me, all slender and elegant. Nice to meet you. With a hearty laugh and a robust figure, Maggie seemed to be a straightforward person. My father-in-law directed a smile towards me and said,
Gabriella, we fully support this marriage. By the way, what does your family think about it?
Well, I explained my family situation, and Keith's family listened attentively with serious expressions. So, I don't have any family, but I believe my late mother would be happy about this marriage. Well, if that's the case, it must have been tough for you until now. While holding back tears, my mother-in-law took my hand. If that's the case, you can think of us as your real parents and rely on us. My sister-in-law also nodded with a serious expression. Keith, make sure to take care of Gabriella properly. Hitting Keith's back, my sister-in-law said this. He lowered his eyebrows, replying,
I know, sis.
On the way back, I told Keith, Your parents and sister are wonderful people. I'm happy to become part of the family.
Really? I was scared of them when I was a kid. Especially my sister. She was like a female gorilla.
Keith shrugged his head, and I laughed a little. Later, Keith and I got married, and we started living in an apartment gifted by my father-in-law as a wedding present. The apartment was located about an hour away from Keith's family home. Soon after that, Keith told me,
Hey, Gabriella, now that we're married, would you consider quitting your job?
Huh? I was surprised. I have been working at that workplace for 10 years as a full-time employee since high school graduation. I had good relationships with my colleagues and superiors. Even after marriage, I naturally assumed I would continue working, as it was also my mother's wish. After quitting her job due to marriage, my mother struggled with finding a new job after her divorce. She had advised me, You'll regret quitting your job after marriage. Don't let go of your career. In accordance with my mother's words, I wanted to continue working. That's why I explained it to Keith. I want to continue working even after marriage. At that moment, he furrowed his brows.
Huh? Your job is just accounting anyway. There are plenty of people who can replace you. I earn enough for us to live comfortably, and I want you to handle the house.
I kept refusing, but Keith persisted. Still, I kept telling him I wouldn't quit my job. It seemed he gave up, and I understood that he had finally relented. We are going to start working together and have a happy marriage. I thought so, but I soon hit a wall. Keith wouldn't do any household chores. Despite having experience living alone, he wouldn't even do simple things like cleaning. While I worked tirelessly on household tasks, he lounged on the sofa, playing with his phone. Handling all the household chores alone became burdensome, as I also had a job. Living alone, I could slack off on chores or cook simple dinners, but with a husband, it was different. Frustrated after months of doing everything by myself, I finally confronted him. Hey, Keith, I have a favor to ask. Could you please help with household chores a bit more? But Keith, without looking up from his phone, responded.
Huh? Why don't you, Gabriella, do it? I'm tired from work.
I work too. It's not fair for me to do all the housework.
There's nothing unfair about it. Household chores are a wife's job. Plus, you chose to work, so manage both work and house chores properly.
But, while I was dumbfounded, he continued.
I've been thinking for a while. You're lacking in house chores. Dinner is too plain, and I want 2 more side dishes. Clean more thoroughly every day.
That's impossible.
Because you're working? I've told you to quit that kind of job.
I don't want to.
Fine. I see.
Keith easily gave in. But 2 days later, something unbelievable happened. My boss came to my desk, showing me a resignation letter.
Gabriella, this came. What's going on?
Huh? I didn't plan on quitting. And I didn't submit a resignation letter.
Could it be your husband's handwriting? I won't pry too much, but talk it over with your husband.
As soon as I got home, I questioned Keith. He responded angrily.
You can't even do house chores properly, and you want to work? I wrote and sent that resignation letter.
This is too much.
Just quit your job. If not, we can get a divorce.
Facing the possibility of divorce less than 6 months into our marriage, I felt paralyzed. I didn't want to be alone again. With a heavy heart, I said, "Okay, I understand. I'll quit my job."
You should have done that from the beginning. Now, focus on house chores.
After Keith left, I cried. From then on, I became Keith's desired stay-at-home wife, but that was the beginning of hell. If I couldn't meet Keith's expectations with household chores, he would scold and berate me. I, who grew up in a single-parent household, was insulted. One day, when I mentioned needing money for living expenses, Keith looked down on me.
You waste money all the time, so I'll manage our finances from now on.
What?
You'll live on $670 per month, and don't slack off on my meals. I'll check the receipts strictly.
So I had to manage our life within a budget of $670 each month, barely covering expenses for 2 people. Despite asking for an increase, I was denied. I resorted to eating close to expiring bread to make ends meet. After a few months of this lifestyle, I lost a considerable amount of weight, and my chronic stomach pain worsened. Keith's demands were endless, turning me into something akin to a slave. But I had no strength left to resist. One day, as I went to pick up dry cleaning, as per Keith's instructions, I collapsed on the street, writhing in pain and covered in cold sweat. Feeling agonized, I eventually lost consciousness. When I came to, I found myself lying on a hospital bed with a doctor peering down at me.
Did you notice? You collapsed on the street.
I had a severe stomach ache.
Let's conduct some tests. Your nutritional condition seems quite poor. You'll be admitted, so please inform your family.
At that moment, I contacted Keith and another person. After the tests, it turned out that I had a severe stomach ulcer. I ended up being hospitalized. I was sitting on my bed in a daze until the evening when I heard the hospital room door open. It was Keith who showed up. He left the door open and approached me with a stern look on his face.
Hospitalized? All of a sudden? What on earth happened?
I collapsed in the driveway. Severe stomach ulcer, malnutrition, and they said I was overworked. Keith sniffed as I answered in a small voice.
Huh, what about it? Overwork is such an exaggeration. You're a carefree housewife.
That's because you...
What the hell are you looking at? Got something to say?
With bloodshot eyes, Keith glared at me and I composed myself. Hospitalization is inevitable. I need to recover.
Then who's gonna do the housework in the meantime, huh?
Well...
Just stop using hospitalization as an excuse to slack off on chores. Hurry up and get discharged to do the housework.
At that moment, Keith violently kicked my bed as I lay there. The impact shook me, and I staggered.
I took in someone as useless as you. Serve me and do the housework perfectly. That's the only thing you, a useless wife, are good for, and I'm supporting you.
At that moment, I reached my limit. I couldn't endure being with such a person in a marriage any longer. Right after that, I noticed a figure behind Keith. Gathering my strength, I smiled at that person. Is that all you wanted to say?
Huh? What do you... So cheeky.
At that moment, I remained silent and pointed behind Keith. Turning around, Keith's face turned pale.
Maggie? And why are Dad and Mom here?
Yes, standing there were my in-laws and my sister-in-law, holding a bouquet for our hospital visit. I asked your sister, who lives near this hospital, to procure some hospital necessities for me. When she did that, it seems your parents got worried and came as well. Before Keith could react, my sister-in-law jumped at him. In the next moment, she expertly threw him with a loud thud onto the hospital room floor.
Ouch! What the hell, Maggie?
Did you forget I took karate lessons? More importantly, what was the meaning of what happened just now? I saw everything, you know.
Everything?
Then my mother-in-law took a step forward. Her face was bright red. Keith, we've been listening to your interactions from the beginning. What on earth is going on? Asking Gabriella to do the housework after she gets discharged? Could it be Gabriella ended up hospitalized like this because of you? Unable to endure it any longer, I shed tears while confessing everything right there. I revealed all the mistreatment I had endured from Keith. The gastric ulcer, malnutrition, overwork, all of it is because of Keith. A silence fell upon the hospital room. Keith, with a bright red face, uttered,
It's my fault? It's because you can't do the housework properly. I just disciplined you. Don't shift the blame.
In the next moment, my mother-in-law slapped Keith across the face.
Ouch! What the hell, Mom?
If you had stayed quiet, what were you planning? Treating Gabriella so horribly. You're heartless. I can't believe you're my son. At this point, my sister-in-law chimed in. You were just pretending to be a good guy in front of us, huh? Your character is twisted. You're the worst for pushing Gabriella to the point of hospitalization.
Hey, Mom. Maggie, calm down. Dad, say something. You should understand my feelings, right?
At this moment, my father-in-law, who had been silent until now, slowly spoke up.
What are you saying? That I would understand your feelings? What a joke. I've never put your mother through such hardship. Dad, you know what it takes to be a president? What, isn't it having a management plan or something? Hey, I've got confidence, you know? No, it's about valuing people first and foremost. To entrust the company to someone who can't cherish his wife like you is unacceptable. I'm firing you, and I'm disowning you as family. Get out of that house. Huh? Fired? Disowned?
Keith, turning pale rapidly, then turned to me.
Fine, I messed up. So Gabriella, please, calm down my dad and the others.
No, I refuse.
Huh?
At that moment, I decisively said to him, Keith, let's get a divorce. I can't forgive you. Please live quietly alone from now on without hurting anyone.
What?
Keith's face turned pale and his neck was grabbed by his sister, who dragged him out. After that, I apologized to my in-laws many times. Eventually, our divorce was finalized, thanks to my father-in-law hiring a lawyer and the favorable testimonies from my in-laws. I smoothly divorced him. I received some property division and alimony. Additionally, my in-laws generously provided a significant amount as compensation. Apparently, that money was from selling the apartment we used to live in. Afterwards, Keith was indeed fired from his father's company. Driven out of his home and having depleted his savings on payments to me, he rolled into a shabby apartment and is desperately job hunting. On my end, thanks to the alimony, I moved and started a new life. Fortunately, I was able to return to the company I left, and now I'm working for a company that I find rewarding. I will continue to be grateful to my in-laws for being on my side. I want to make an effort to find true happiness.